Dot, 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 dot. Good morning, everybody. This is Grant from State of the Spark, and I'm super happy to be here today. We've got a great show for you today. Here, let me just turn this up a little bit. Boom. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to be covering what everyone goes through when it comes to mastery, but we're also going to be covering not what it takes to master, because quite often I've observed a lot of people have hit mastery, but they stalled out in being a master at their own thing. So we're going to be covering the 4 milestones or challenges you need to be looking towards to actually take the next level, to not be a master, but at a new level. We're going to cover that. We just got one quick piece of other news today. We're going to be covering that Hawaiian peace lanterns and how Hawaiians try to express Shinyo, and we'll cover that a little bit. But before any of that, my beautiful beauties, before any of that, we're gonna be covering a morning cup of gratitude. What are you grateful for this morning? Do you have a cup of gratitude? Do you have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or just water? And are you starting your day looking at that, looking at the sunrise, looking at your schedule today and expressing gratitude? Do you have gratitude today? I want to hear about it in the comments below, what you're grateful for, and I'm going to turn off this crazy fan. Hang on. Boom. It's not often you are in a show and someone turns off a crazy fan, but there you have it. We're going to start with a morning cup of gratitude. So what am I grateful for this morning? Well, 2 things. Well, many things, but 2 of them are. Last night, we got together with our lovely team. Our team is awesome. They work remotely, but we get to see each other a few days a week. And one of them's going to be spending more time in her hometown. And so we just got together to hang out, and she had an awesome boyfriend, Tom. And this is a shout out to Tom this morning. We had a great time playing Cards Against Humanity, and this guy's hilarious. Not only is he a doctor, not only is he finishing or half finished his MBA, but the guy does improv, and he does improv phenomenally, not just because he's funny, but he's also funny because he has a genuine British accent, and that makes his improv even funnier. So we had a fantastic time. So I'm grateful for that. I'm definitely grateful for that, and I'm grateful for this quote from an ancient personal development writer. For those who don't know, I love personal, old and out of print personal development material. I do it. I read it. We collect it. Anywhere we travel, I'm always looking for those things. So today, this was actually a gift. This particular book or print edition is not out of print, but the author, James Allen, As a Man Thinketh, phenomenal. This quote hit me between the eyes this morning. This quote absolutely devastated me this morning, and it was this: aimlessness is not a vice. I'm sorry, let me say that again. Aimlessness is a vice, and such drifting must not continue, for they who would steer clear of catastrophe and destruction. It's a reminder. Good morning, Root. Good to see you this morning, sir. I hope you're doing fantastic. That's the lovely Root Patel who's taking over the world. Again, that quote is, aimlessness is a vice and addiction, and such drifting must not continue, for they who would steer clear of catastrophe and destruction. You know, quite often, a lot of young people are studying how-tos, and especially today, people are like, I'm going to get into crypto, and they got into crypto really late, and last week, they feel like they've lost their entire savings, but they don't know how to trade. They're lost. So we could talk about principles, buy low, sell high, but before all of that, before we talk about how-tos, or even broader, before we talk about principles, we should be educating ourselves on our aim. What's our goal? Where are you headed? What direction are you setting for yourself? That is leading you nearly more than anything else going on. And then, of course, there's contextual or seasonal principles, and there's contextual how-tos, but it's most important that you are not aimless. And more importantly, this writer, James Allen, said that aimlessness is an addiction. It's a vice. It's like being a drunk. It's like being, it's someone who is fighting human nature. We are teleological like a pigeon. You give us a goal and we go that direction. It's science, guys. What I'm grateful for is that quote that reminds me that aimlessness is a vice and such drifting must not continue, for they who would steer clear of catastrophe and destruction. I'm grateful for that quote this morning. Grateful for my team that we got to hang out last night. What are you grateful for? I see you. There's 3 of you watching. There's 4 of you watching. Now there's 2. Now there's 5. What are you grateful for this morning? Please do let me know in the comments. Let's talk about other news. News to uplift you and make you smarter. Let's do this. So Hawaiian peace lanterns. So there's now, or has been for a while, a tradition in Hawaii, specifically in the Ala Moana Park, I believe, where on Memorial Day, they do the lantern floating. Now, this is a great day to memorialize people. Often, lantern floating is the release of the lantern in a symbolic collective vow to work towards a peaceful future, to make notes and comments to your ancestors, and then really to reflect that, am I being the best I can be to honor the past and to take us into the future? And people will write down thoughts about loved ones as well as commitments of who they're going to be in these lanterns, and they float them, and they do this every year. And it's a beautiful, I imagine it's a beautiful ceremony. I would love to actually participate in this. And they call this Shinyo. Shinyo, obviously a lot of what goes on in Hawaii comes from Japanese culture. And Shinyo is a term used to describe basically our best self. How do we become our best self? What is our Shinyo? What are we doing to be our best self? And it's a great event every Memorial Day to actually write down in a lantern, just like you used to do at youth camp. You used to write down your secret sins or your desires for who you wanted to be. And then you would light them and burn them in a fire pit or let them float away into the sky. Very similar, but it's a beautiful thing. And if you do it as a community, it has this collective level that I've made a commitment. And though your commitment might have been private to you, you did stand with others and make that commitment. It's a beautiful thing. Well, unfortunately, the Ala Moana Shinyo lantern floating event has been canceled for the 2nd year in a row, of course, because of the pandemic. Well, the community just didn't want to stand for this. They love this event. And so the community in Hawaii got with artist Hideki Tsutsui. If I'm mispronouncing his name, I'm sure I am. They got together and they put together an art installation. He is a light installation designer. And they put together what amounts to a large, giant lantern, a large symbolic representation of one of these ceremonial lanterns. And he's lit it so that it projects the kukui tree, which itself represents light, hope, and renewal. Does your community, does your neighborhood have any sort of these cool symbols that they agree represent good things? Well, this community does. And they've put together this art installation piece where you can book 30 minutes to sit and reflect, write down who you no longer want to be, write down who you do want to be, write down messages to your ancestors or the dead, or just your intentionality in the universe, and you can then put them in the kukui tree. So it's a phenomenal, beautiful representation, and I wish that our community had similar commitments, that we could get together in our central parks and connect with one another and actually show, you don't have to show your private thoughts, but actually symbolize that we're coming out together and we're going to write down who we no longer want to be, who we do want to be, and think about future generations. Think about excellence. Think about mastery of being a person. And that, my friends, is what we're talking about in today's lesson, is personal and professional mastery. That's our piece of other news. Hawaiian peace lanterns, the Shinyo lantern floating tradition, is being canceled again, but they're doing something about it as a community. Check that link out. Let me make sure you have that link. You really should check this out. And if any of you watching today or later or listening to the show on Spotify or anywhere else you are, let me know in the Goals and Gratitude group, which is right here. And you know what? We're going to stinking do this. If enough of you say, I want to do this ceremony, then we're going to get together and do something like it where we'll actually make on Memorial Day some interesting, dynamic ceremony, whether we have to do it virtually. But I need to hear from enough of you. So jump over to the Facebook Goals and Gratitude group and let us know that that's something you might want to participate in, and we'll do something about it. That's our piece of other news. Let's talk about the process of mastery, but more important, how people stall out within mastery. Let's talk about it. So yesterday, in the show notes, I promised that we would actually cover how, yesterday we talked about curiosity and how my secret millionaire mentor uses curiosity to actually expand a world and live an enriched life where he's discovering more of what's going on, how he got into commercial real estate. And then I promised in the show notes, and I totally missed this, that I wanted to actually share my own story of how I used curiosity to find a secret hidden golden tree in Shanghai. And I'm going to tell that story right now. Real quick, though, let's actually hear from Jessica Ojeda. Good morning, Grant. I'm grateful for reconnecting with an old friend, and we're just having a blast together, but we're also sharing gardening knowledge. For those who don't know, please follow the YouTube channel with Jessica and the Ojedas, because they're homesteading, they're gardening. She's really passionate about it. And Jessica goes on to say she's teaching me about non-edible plants, which is funny because we spend so much time with edible plants. Non-edible plants actually contribute to the health of a healthy little biome or ecosystem for the non-edible plants. So that's Jessica Ojeda. Go follow her Facebook channel. The family's awesome. They're spending less and less time on Facebook, more and more time educationally on YouTube, and I applaud them for that. Let's actually talk about the secret Chinese tree in an alley, how that leads to curiosity, and then where curiosity has led me to today. Very briefly, for those who don't know, the term I forgot completely yesterday was semester at sea. I traveled, for those who don't know, with semester at sea in 2005, and obviously it was a life experience. It was huge for me, a huge milestone, and I refer to it often. I'm still extracting lessons from that trip to this day, 15 years later or more. But real quick, one of those experiences was this. I had quit my job. I had moved out of my place. I had no ties. I was completely untethered in that season. I had put a ton of money in the bank. And so I knew where I was staying on the ship. I knew what my ports of call were for the next 4 months. And I had very little to worry about. You need to engineer these seasons in your life. Steven Sagmeister calls them micro retirements. You need to go through life and schedule a complete season where you have no commitments. And you need to then enter a state of curiosity. When we landed in Shanghai, I decided that I was going to learn everything I could about that area and what was going on in China. Because you grow up and you hear, social assumptions about these countries, and I didn't want to have those anymore. I actually wanted to know more deeply about the Chinese culture and what was going on. So I let my intuition guide me. I got into taxis and just drove places, which is how I found the Jade Buddha. A taxi driver said, "You really need to see this." And I had a gorgeous tea ceremony at the Jade Buddha in Shanghai. Later, it served me to find the world's largest seated Buddha in Hong Kong, which was a phenomenal experience. But back in Shanghai, I went about my day, and someone had told me, a Chinese gentleman, had told me about old Shanghai, or the old city. I was like, okay, that sounds cool. And he said, you need to go check it out. So I went and checked it out, and it turned out it was a little touristy. And as I was walking around, I saw a bunch of tourists and a bunch of Chinese people as well. And I was walking around and I decided, I want to actually discover something. I'm curious. And I sat and started to people watch. And as I was watching the gringo, the Eastern European and American tourists kind of mill about, I actually saw that at a certain hour, many of the Chinese people started moving towards a particular alley. And I listened to my native curiosity. You could call it intuition. You could call it ADD. But for me, it was actual curiosity. And I followed this group of people. And it followed them, and they were walking down the street. They turned down an alley. I went down that alley. And it was just a normal alley, kind of clean. And then they turned down a back street. And then eventually the people started disappearing. And I lost track of this group of people. And I started wandering these alleys. And finally I found this old alley. There was a guy smoking there, sweeping, a Chinese gentleman, kind of robust, rotund. And I went to go down the alley, and he put his hand on my shoulder. He said, no, 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 no. And he didn't speak English, and I didn't speak Chinese. He said, no, 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 no. And I gesticulated. I gestured to him like, I'm curious. I'm looking around. And he kind of shrugged like this. And he said, and kind of smiled at me, put a cigarette in his mouth, and said, check it out. And good morning, Robert Blackledge. Thanks for the like this morning. I appreciate it. And gestured me through into the alley finally. So after his protests, and I finally kind of pleaded with the guy, and we were making do, not speaking each other's language. He finally said, fine, come on back. And I started walking down a very long, dark alley, and there was toilet drippings and AC, and it was grimy. And then I suddenly turned a corner, and I found the group of Chinese plus many more Chinese people that I had not seen, and they were congregated in this small quad in the back alley. And I've got to show this to you. If you're watching the show, great. Check this out. Bear with me. Boop. It looked like this. It felt like this. There was Chinese lanterns and Chinese signs and the smell of rice being cooked. And instead of it being an open area with this stair, there was actually a golden tree. It wasn't golden yet. It was actually just a scraggly old tree. And you could see that they'd been taking care of this tree for many years, if not decades and centuries. And I was wondering what was going on, and I noticed that everyone was kind of looking down, and they were writing things on these slips of paper. And I noticed that next to these ribbons of paper, there was a coin. And someone was putting out these little gold coins, and people were giving them money for these little gold coins, so I gave them money for a little gold coin. And they were writing on these slips of papers that were tied to these gold coins. And if you've ever seen these Chinese gold coins, they have a square stamped, punctured right through the middle so you can tie things to them. And suddenly, I didn't know who got the notice, but someone notified everyone. And at the same time, they started laughing and shouting and throwing these gold coins, which had the streaming ribbons tailoring behind them, hooking over the trees. It was some tradition that this quad or this community had. And they were throwing them. And I asked, what is going on? It was exciting. And someone leaned over who spoke English, and they said, they basically said, this is the prosperity tree. And everyone writes their wishes for the new year on these coins. And if you hook your coin, it's good luck. And if you don't hook your coin, the kids would run in, grab all the coins, and throw them again until all these ribbons and gold coins were on the tree. And suddenly this large barren tree had beautiful gold tinkling coins and wishes and desires of the community. Once again, for those who are just jumping on the show, this is an alley just like the alley I was in. And imagine a large golden tree right in the middle. Curiosity. Curiosity is what leads you on adventures. If you just want to go on adventures, there's too much desperation in that. It's like a date who's too desperate for the date to go well. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in native curiosity. Man, I'm sincerely interested in what's going on in this corner of the world, what's going on in this hut. That's led me to Haiti. It led me to get on the back of a moped and hand out rice across the north of Haiti and us develop what turned out to the next 5 or 6 years of my life building an organization in Haiti. Native curiosity led me to coaching. And so what I want to share this morning is how native curiosity led me to coaching, and specifically what I have a curiosity in is, what is mastery? And how do people develop mastery? But more important, those who have developed mastery at a certain level, why do they stall out? Well, real quick, here's the process of mastery. Here's how people develop mastery. They have basically, hold on real quick. Jessica says, what an amazing thing to experience. How beautiful. It was amazing, Jessica. It was, again, life-altering. And I've had many life-altering experiences later, and maybe it's my Pollyanna philosophy of life where I go through life and I just have these experiences and they become stories for me. And we could tell you tragic stories and beautiful stories from Haiti voodoo. We could tell you a lot about some cool stuff about the places we've been. This was just one that I was very fortunate and very blessed to have allowed my intuition and my curiosity to help me stumble on. So the phases of mastery, what happens is this: someone has a desire and they have what in business we call the entrepreneurial seizure, or in personal life, they just absolutely can't stand who they've been standing themselves to be, and they want to shift. So they enter into a new skill, new trade, new job, new relationship. If we were talking about the total life experience from State of Spark, new fitness and health, new gym routine, relationships, they'd be shifting their relationships, work they enjoy, they'd step into a new job or in a new direction. Or spirituality, they'd have a new spiritual practice, prayer or meditation or something to that effect, journaling, even reflection, retreat, silence, something to that effect. And phase one is always stumbling. They're going to get it wrong. Too often, the perfectionists of the world think they have to get it right before they do the thing, which is, in my world, completely insane. I can't fathom how I would start something new and not be horrible first at it. You got to give yourself permission. It's okay to stumble first, so long as you bring the second phase, and that's grinding. Once you stumble and learn the principles and learn the tools and learn the vocab, then you grind. You're learning mastery, you're learning repetition, you're learning skill, you're learning kind of what doesn't work, but you're putting in the time. So first you stumble, then you grind, and then comes skill. Then comes mastery, then comes flow. So once you've stumbled into something and we're horrible at it first, and then you grind at it and learn the skills, then comes a bit of mastery. Well, let me tell you about mastery. It leads you to the fourth step, which is hypnotic rhythm. Hypnotic rhythm is mastery gone wrong. Hypnotic rhythm is when you've mastered something so well, you know how to schedule your day. You actually get so much more done in 15 minutes than other people who are just starting out. I see this with sales all the time. I procrastinate sales, and then I'll suddenly spend 45 minutes a week on sales. If I had spent 4 hours a week on sales, I would be untouchable. But because I'm so good at it, I've mastered it, I get into hypnotic rhythm, and I can do it in like 45 minutes, and I get some good results. I might start my day with huge desires, but I allow myself to settle into very comfortable, very familiar work. I've mastered something, so I've allowed myself to get sucked into the fourth phase, which is mastery gone wrong, and that's stale mastery. It's hypnotic rhythm. Hypnotic rhythm is not completely horrible. It's actually evidence of a good truth. You are extraordinary at something. Hypnotic rhythm is the payoff, right? I struggled and I went through all the grind and I stumbled. I should spend a season in habit of just doing it really well so I can profit from it finally, profit from my actions. Whether it's fitness, man, it's so tough to get to the gym, and then you're putting in the work, you're grinding, and then you master, you know your time, you know your schedule, get in there, and that's when you should really benefit from your mastery. The same with relationships, the same with your new job. The same with spirituality. Meditation's really hard and it's work at first. But then you should spend a season of enjoying just being able to sit down and do it with ease. But if you let it go too long, it becomes stale. Hypnotic rhythm is mastery gone stale. I'm grateful for curious people. Curious people change things. I wonder why that is. Who actually posted this comment? This is a great comment. Who actually posted this? Let me see. Oh, this is Root. Root, you're back over on the Goals and Gratitude group. This is Root Patel. I'm grateful for curious people. Curious people can change things. I absolutely agree. In fact, I find that the people who are the biggest change agents in the world are people who usually have curiosity mind or beginner's mind, as we talked about yesterday. Totally valid. Absolutely. So once someone has stumbled, they've gone through the grind, they've mastered something, if it goes on just a little too long, they get into hypnotic rhythm. So here's the deal. You get bored with hypnotic rhythm. You start sabotaging your own work. You start working less. Why? Because it's just so easy. I could do it. This motivation is now starting to rot. Your motivation and your desires are starting to go stale. When you've mastered something and you're just so good at it, and the underlings or the people you're trying to delegate to are like, meh, whatever. And you're like, I'll step in and I'll do it because I'm the best at it. That's when your motivation is starting to rot because your mastery is going stale. That's hypnotic rhythm. So you're ready for the next level. This is where most people start to level off. This is where people in their early to mid 30s start to just coast. And this is when they start to put on too much of a gut. This is when they stop talking about changing the world. This is about when they just like, you know what? Good enough is good enough. And you know what? For many people, that might be true. But for you, for me, for Spark citizens, for people trying to impact the world, it's not good enough. So what should you focus on? How do you prevent yourself from going stale? Here's the 4 quick principles, the 4 milestones you need to be grabbing, you need to go after in order to actually move into a new level. And this sounds bizarro, but if you think about Spark, Ignite, Explode, Radiate, that's also the phases of mastery. You have a vision for something, you got to ignite successes, so that spark your vision. You got a vision for this new thing. You got to grind, which is ignite success. You're going to grind it out. You got to explode significance, and that's where you're just doing it so well. It's so easy. And then the 4th is reflective, radiate purpose. That's where you reflect. It's a winter season where you're reflecting. That framework, it's a freedom framework, a state of the spark. We came up with that. Nearly every personal guru system falls in line with that same framework. So if you're in a radiate purpose season, you need to own that. And then you need to hit these 4 milestones. And these are sequential. Those 4 steps to actually giving yourself permission and getting ready to make the leap. Because once you've had mastery and life has gotten easy and you've enjoyed a degree of boredom, stepping into a new level, oh my gosh, it's so much work. Am I starting over again? No, you're leveling up. But the beginner's mind's tough, and you know the energy it takes because you're experienced now. And in knowing the energy it takes, there could be some internal resistance in your heart. Here's the 4 steps. Number 1, write this down. Reacquaint with yourself. Journal. Write in your journal. Make coffee dates away from your normal workplace. If you're used to working at home, go to a coffee shop for an hour and a half. An hour and a half. Just an hour is okay. You can sneak away for an hour and not really get shifted. 2 hours is probably too long from the important work you should be doing. An hour and a half will get you away from the urgent work, trying to suck you back into the law of hypnotic rhythm. So reacquaint, number 1, reacquaint with yourself. Go on a coffee date for about an hour and a half. Do pattern interrupts. Go to the gym at odd hours. Right now, Marissa and I are doing 75 hard, or at least they do 75 moderate to hard. And we're allowing ourselves to go to the gym in the middle of the afternoon. That pattern interrupt is so valuable because it causes a little anxiety in me. I've got all this work to do, and I'll have to do that work a little bit later. I'm moving the work around, but it's interrupting my patterns. I'm having new thoughts about what's happening with the business next. I'm able to step out of the work and actually look at the work while I'm on the treadmill. I'm thinking about these projects, and I'm going, okay, I should be able to step away for 45 minutes. Pattern interrupts, journaling, coffee dates, reacquaint with yourself, or in the Spark system we call radiate purpose, reconnect with yourself. Step 2, begin to boldly work in new complexities. Now, this is a weird phrase. Begin to learn to work in new complexities. When I coach people and I see that they want a new level, there's resistance. They've just gotten mastery, which means that they've simplified everything in their life. But the next level inherently has innate complexities. Let me give you a quick example of this. I can sell like it's nobody's business. Give me even a rude outline of your business or service. Put me in front of a new person, a new audience, and I could probably sell them. I'm natural at sales at this point. I'm mastered how to sell. But at the next level, it's not all about sales. I've got to do nuanced marketing. And there's complexities to marketing. I've got to shape my messaging. I can't just show up at a coffee date, buy a coffee, and let my charisma go. I could, But that's not the next level. That's just mastery and hypnotic rhythm at this level. It's easy for me. I'm not challenged in it, so I don't excel. But instead, if I started to add on this level called marketing for real, putting together my messaging, adding the step of having to craft and shape that, then how to distribute that, and then how to actually work on my conversion tactics, I've added these mechanisms of complexity. That's a small example of leveling up in the area of sales. So as you reacquaint with yourself, you then need to actually start to ask yourself, what complexities have I been avoiding? We need to learn to work in new complexities. We need to learn to work in new and bigger teams with different types of personalities that we have avoided. We need to go from simple business management or project management mechanisms to multi-step. I'm going to then do, for example, we've been leading our teams by waking up, we get together, we hoorah, and we push them out the door and say, go. We need to add some nuances, some one-on-ones, some 360 reviews, some weekly alignments, some quarterly alignments. Do you get my drift? You need to be okay with added complexities if you're going to level up. Now, you might still message to the team simplicity. Hey, sales is super simple. Do this. But you as manager and leader are leveling up to add complexities in your game. I tell Marissa right now, we're juggling multiple investment properties right now. We're leveling up the company. We're leveling up our sales team. We've sold more. We had our record-breaking month, and I'm trying to manage a relationship with my partners in Spark Bookkeeping because that's blowing up. On top of that, I've got to publish my books and get my book teams for Spark Training going. And I've got a training client. Just today, I'm training with a client, a leadership team for a local small business. I told Marissa, I was like, the number one skill here is stress management or energy management. For us to level up, we've got to be better at dealing with this first, the appearance of stress. Just because something's complex doesn't mean it's stressful. In fact, channeling that stress into quicker decision-making, more definitive decision-making, and moving forward, even if it's low-quality decision-making, we've got to handle these complexities. So leveling up is learning about new complexities. That's number 2. Number 3, expand your beliefs. Einstein said you cannot solve problems at the same level of thinking you had when you shaped those problems, and that couldn't be more true today. You cannot solve problems at the same level of thinking you had when you shaped that problem. I feel that. Do you feel that? And that's what I'm talking about. As you're learning to work in new complexities, you've had the literal mechanical ability to handle those complexities the whole time, but you haven't had the paradigm. Oh, all these complexities are stressful. Well, if you could manage that stress, you could expand your belief that, complexities aren't stressful. They're just complex. And I need either new professionals or new team members, or I need to inform myself. So complexity isn't bad. That's one of these beliefs that have to shift. We never do things this way. My website company isn't an agency. Maybe I need to start thinking about that. Jessica says, powerful message. I feel it, man. I feel this too. Jessica's looking at adding non-food or non-consumable plants into her garden. That's adding a level of complexity. She's mastered or has approached mastery with food gardening. What about other gardening? What about pollinators? We can welcome these complexities into our life, and therefore we have to expand our beliefs. That's number 3. Expand your beliefs. Challenge your assumptions. This is native curiosity. This is going back to beginner's mind. You know what? I always say this phrase. When I encounter this situation, I always say this phrase. Let me stop saying that and start asking questions. Expand your beliefs. And number 4, trust your story at that point. Listen, when you develop a new beginner's mind, you can suddenly start second guessing yourself. Wait, do I really know my stuff? Why? Well, I can really do this really well, but I don't know what I'm doing here. Well, no shit, Sherlock, you're doing something new. What are you saying? Right? But quit second guessing the fact that you've had a story. It's meant to be beginner's mind. It's meant to be fresh. It's meant to be new. You're meant to stumble. You're meant to feel like an infant again. That is the point. So you have to trust your story. You have to trust that you've had experience that has led you here and that you have an array of skills and talents that you could fall back on, but you're going to stick it out because you're trying to add new skills, new talent, new strength. Number one, reacquaint with yourself again. Number two, learn to work in new complexities. Number three, expand your beliefs. And number four, trust your story to that point. You can do this and take the next level. Listen, that is how you avoid the malaise of leveling off too soon and getting stuck in mastery where it goes stale and turns into hypnotic rhythm and begins to rot your motivations. Listen, you know what I'm going to do next. I'm going to have breakfast with my lovely wife. But before we do, I want to encourage you. If you need any help at all, if you want to talk about any of this stuff, right now we're having a conversation in the Facebook Goals and Gratitude group, and we're talking about, heck, 75 hard. But we're working through these things as placebo or a sandbox to make ourselves better, to work on our Shinyo, to discover our best selves. If you want to get involved in that conversation, join us at the Facebook Goals and Gratitude group. Constantly, please be checking with the State of the Spark for any tools, training, books, courses, any of those things that we plan on rolling out. But before you do anything, or while you do all of these things, remember the mission today. Igniting lives of explosive significance, starting with your own. Have a phenomenal day.